Every year, 60 superstars enter the Royal Rumble match with one goal in mind: to win, main event WrestleMania, and change their careers forever. But for every winner, there's someone who came one elimination away from that moment. The runner-up. And WWE history could look very different if just a few eliminations had gone the other way. I personally love the Royal Rumble. It's my favorite pay-per-view of the entire year. Even when it's mid, I still find myself enjoying the suspense of it.
Gunther eliminated! Roman Reigns did it! Roman Reigns is going to WrestleMania!
So we're exploring every WrestleMania main event that would have happened if the Royal Rumble runner-up had won instead. Some would have created legendary matches, and others would have completely changed WWE history. And a few might have led to disasters. The first Royal Rumble in 1988 didn't award a WrestleMania title shot yet, but if the runner-up one-man gang had won instead of Jim Duggan, the babyface momentum might have looked very different for the Hacksaw. The idea of winning and getting a title shot and main eventing at Mania only came around in 1993. So for the early years, you'd have, for example, in 1989, instead of Big John Studd, it would have been Ted DiBiase. In 1990 and 1991, when Hulk Hogan won, it could have been Earthquake or even Mr. Perfect. And in 1992, in that famous Ric Flair Rumble, it could have been Sid Justice.
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life.
The idea of Mr. Perfect winning a Royal Rumble sounds, well, perfect. Mr. Perfect versus Ultimate Warrior for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania would have been a completely different kind of main event. But the Flair Rumble in 1992 will always be iconic, so I'm happy with that reality.
It's Flair from behind! Oh, yes! 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 Flair did it!
So moving on to 1993, when Yokozuna won, instead it would have been Macho Man Randy Savage. Still to this day, one of the most illogical Royal Rumble endings I think ever. The concept of hitting your finish and then going for a pin in a non-pin match and then getting tossed from being prone over the top rope. Ay, ay, ay. Like, don't get me wrong, you can wrestle a match and maybe your brain's a little scrambled, but Macho Man, I know you weren't that stupid. Come on.
Oh yeah, digging the Macho Man's brains were a little bit scrambled. He went for that macho elbow.
Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Hitman Bret Hart for the WWF Championship would have been an all-time classic. Now, in 1994, we had co-winners, of course, Bret Hart and Lex Luger. Because Bret and Luger technically tied, this year gets a little weird. But if Bret had won outright, the WrestleMania 10 title picture likely wouldn't have been split between Bret versus Owen and Luger versus Yokozuna. And then vice versa if Luger had won outright. In 1995, the British Bulldog would have won instead of that famous moment with only one of Michael's boots touching the floor. Bulldog versus Diesel at WrestleMania 11 would have been a strong power match, but for sure less iconic than Diesel versus Michael. Although the British Bulldog, in my opinion, is one of the most sorely underrated what-if scenarios in pro wrestling, and it's a shame things happened the way they did. In 1996, the match was of course won again by Shawn Michaels, but if Diesel had won instead, he would have challenged Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12. But here's the twist. That means the Iron Man match between Bret and Shawn never happened. One of WWE's most important matches in history might never exist. Alternatively, if the roles were flipped, then HBK may have faced The Undertaker that year in an early preview of things to come at WrestleMania. And then once we dive into the Attitude Era, a runner-up winning the Royal Rumble match could have completely changed WWE's most influential period. In 1997, if Bret won instead of Austin, WrestleMania 13 could have become Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels 2. And Austin's rise might have been delayed a bit, but the situation leading into this WrestleMania is complicated, and it wouldn't be the first time in 1997 where Bret got screwed. I'm sorry. The original plan was for Austin to win the Rumble in an underhanded way, which he did, then have Bret Hart become the #1 contender to face Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 13 in a rematch. But since Shawn hurt his knee and vacated the title due to losing his smile, everything changed. Austin didn't get his title shot at WrestleMania, and they went with Psycho Sid versus Undertaker for the championship instead. Although these changes did give us Hart versus Austin, which was a classic, so if Bret wins, we could have had any combination of Bret Shawn 2, Bret versus Taker, Bret versus versus Sid, there's a few what-if scenarios here. In 1998, we could have got The Rock versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania. That is truly an insane what-if. Austin's legendary title win that launched the Attitude Era might have never happened. And it's weird to think about, isn't it? The Austin era doesn't begin at Mania, if ever. But The Rock could have been the one to launch the era of Attitude instead. It's still a shame that we never got that Rock HBK program back in the day. In 1999, a match won by Mr. McMahon would have instead been won by Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold versus The Rock still likely happens at WrestleMania that year, but the road to it would have been a little different.
They're getting it on! Wait a minute! Wait a minute! No! No! Mr. McMahon!
You also have the possibility in this timeline of Austin having won 4 Rumbles in 5 years. In 2000, the Big Show would have been the one to win instead of The Rock. Big Show actually did get inserted into the WrestleMania 2000 main event, to be fair, but if he'd won outright, the entire McMahon in every corner storyline might not exist. And even The Rock himself on WWE programming has joked about the way his feet hit the floor and realistically he shouldn't have won, and all the different scenarios that the Big Show could have been in had he actually won the match he technically won.
Watched that Royal Rumble and said, whoever wins this Royal Rumble, I'm gonna cast as a Scorpion King. Yeah, that should have been you. You should have been the Scorpion King.
In 2001, the match was won by Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Kane versus The Rock for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 17 is a truly fascinating alternate timeline. And imagine that infamous My Way promo by Limp Bizkit, but it's Kane?
Let's take Katie Vick out of the situation. Bam, non-factor. The fact is, Rock, you have the WWF title, and I'm gonna send you directly to hell.
But Austin turning heel that night at Mania might have never happened. And on the face of that, the downfall of WWE's hottest period may not have happened either. Of course, WWE probably still buys WCW, but they might have stayed hotter for longer. Because if Austin didn't turn heel and side with the man he'd rallied against for years, then everything is different. If we look back at the 2001 Royal Rumble and Kane's domination, he really should have won the match anyway. But Austin's return from surgery that kept him out most of 2000 earned him that redemption toll. Now, the Ruthless Aggression Era has some of the most interesting runner-up scenarios of them all. In 2002, Kurt Angle wins over Triple H, and much like Kane, Angle should have won at least one Royal Rumble in his career. I often think if Angle didn't leave for TNA when he did, they would have had the Olympic machine go from #1 eliminating everybody. Angle versus Jericho at WrestleMania 18 would have been fantastic, but WWE instead gave us Triple H's big comeback win from his injury in 2001. The entire Mania 18 card could have been so different in so many ways based on the integration of WCW stars. I mean, we could have got Mr. Perfect versus Kurt Angle, we could have had Austin Hogan, we could have even had the Stinger versus any number of stars if he jumped ship when everybody else did. In 2003, The Undertaker wins instead and faces Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 19. That match could have been legendary. And I think in hindsight, if WWE knew Brock wasn't sticking around long term, they would have ran that match instead. In 2004, of course, it was won by Chris Benoit, but instead it would have been won by the runner-up, The Big Show. Big Show versus Triple H obviously would have been far less emotional and impactful than Benoit's big title win in that triple threat, but at least The Big Show would have got redemption for the year 2000, and WWE would have had a far easier time explaining what exactly happened at the 2004 Royal Rumble instead of just saying, someone from #1 won. While I am absolutely and I would never justify his later actions, I am happy that we did get that WrestleMania 20 moment between him and Eddie Guerrero. In 2005, if John Cena won the Rumble instead, he likely still challenges JBL at WrestleMania 21 anyway, and realistically, Batista was still going to find his way to win the world title that night as well. It just means Cena would have won 3 Royal Rumbles by the year 2013. In 2006, we get Orton versus Kurt Angle for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 21. 2022, instead of the emotional Rey Mysterio tribute storyline. Although realistically, if Orton does win, he too would have 3 Royal Rumble wins under his belt right now. But I think personally, Mysterio in this scenario still finds his way into the world title match on account of the Eddie tribute. Maybe it's just something more akin to Daniel Bryan working his way into the main event in 2014. In 2007, HBK wins instead of The Undertaker, and he has another Royal Rumble match, making it 3 for him too. HBK versus John Cena could have been WrestleMania 23's main event instead of Undertaker continuing the streak.
Well, you know, maybe HBK goes after Bobby Lashley in the ECW Championship instead. I mean...
Or if Shawn goes after Batista's big gold, then Taker may end up facing Cena somehow. And the idea of getting Prime Undertaker versus Prime John Cena at WrestleMania, oh my goodness. In 2008, if they have Cena make his heroic return at Madison Square Garden just to lose, we get Triple H versus Randy Orton likely one-on-one rather than the triple threat. Although it could be argued due to his injury-defying comeback, John Cena finds a way in regardless, perhaps through the No Way Out Elimination Chamber just as Triple H did. In 2009, if Triple H overcomes Legacy in the Rumble match, he might have chosen Edge, which dramatically changes that WrestleMania card. Although honestly, the road to WrestleMania in 2009 it was filled with many twists and turns. Even if Triple H wins, you could have still had No Way Out 2009 where Edge lost his WWE title, only to end the night as world champion.
Again, a spear! Oh no, don't tell me! Edge into the cover, off the spear! You know! This can't be!
Perhaps in that scenario, instead of winning his 13th WWE title in the chamber, we see fan favorite Jeff Hardy win the WWE title again. Then we get Triple H versus Jeff Hardy at Mania 25 in an Extreme Rules match, but maybe Orton would have found his way in the chamber regardless, won the WWE title, and then the rules just would have been reversed between him and Triple H at WrestleMania. Because realistically, even if Randy had the gold, he still could have done all the he was doing with Stephanie and torturing the McMahons. It would have just been like,
the game is he needs to get redemption. You kissed my wife.
In 2010, instead of Edge winning after his iconic return and eliminating John Cena,
something coming! Oh no! Edge has done it! Edge has done it!
Cena could have faced Chris Jericho at WrestleMania for the big goal. Maybe Edge faces Batista in that timeline since Batista was eliminated by Edge. Perhaps Edge wins the chamber and then, like Cena did, gets screwed over by Vince McMahon and faces Batista in a similar story, with Batista knowing how Edge changed up and it makes him sick. Cena and Jericho would have had plenty of recent and not so recent history to play off as well. In this timeline, it also means that John Cena would have ultimately had 3 Rumble wins. In 2011, Santino was seconds away from winning instead of Alberto Del Rio. Santino versus Edge at WrestleMania 27 would have been insane on paper, but given how over Santino was and how much the crowd wanted him to win, I think it could have worked. The Rocky story told through Santino's shocking ascension to the main event, and the idea of the moment of Santino winning the World Championship at WrestleMania is the most road to WrestleMania I think I've ever heard, but I think it could have worked. He also could have so easily won the chamber in 2012 against D-Bry, and it would have made booking sense why Sheamus beat him in 18 seconds. And for those of you that watch my videos regularly, you know I constantly bring that scenario up, and I'm sorry, but it just would have made much more sense. Like, am I wrong? Am I not spitting? In 2012, it was originally won by Sheamus, but in this scenario, Jericho caps his return by winning his first Rumble match. He likely still challenges CM Punk at WrestleMania 28 anyway, and that story might not have changed much. He could have challenged Daniel Bryan for the big gold, noting back on their NXT game show history from a couple years prior, but arguably Jericho should have won the match in 2012, but I always liked that one as a kid nonetheless. Now, in 2013, it was won by John Cena, but if the runner-up had won, then it would have gone to Ryback, which means at WrestleMania, we would have got Ryback versus The Rock for the WWE title. Yeah. No. And the concept of CM Punk's 434-day reign ending just to end up on the still green Ryback at the end of the day, oh my god. Talking about some feed me more, eat this rock bottom at a people's elbow, you jabroni. The only alternate timeline I'd accept for Mania 29 is where Punk holds the belt for 500 days into Mania, and we get the Punk Rock Cena triple threat. Because in that timeline, at least Rock versus Cena remains once in a lifetime. Maybe then you run Daniel Bryan versus The Undertaker instead. Now, 2014 is interesting. We would have had Roman Reigns win and face Randy Orton at WrestleMania 30. Roman's push might have started a full year earlier, and it might have been more well received. Given how much Batista got boos on that night, everybody actually wanted Roman to do it then. How things would change a year later, mind you. But Shield Reigns facing Orton probably would have had him lose and then go through the Shield breakup arc anyway. In 2015, Rusev wins the Royal Rumble instead of Roman Reigns, so we get Rusev versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. That could have been an incredible monster clash, and I think even in that timeline, Seth Rollins still cashes in Money in the Bank. Perhaps Roman Reigns' push is more gradual, and he beats Cena for the mid-card US title instead. In 2016, Dean Ambrose would have won the Royal Rumble and the WWE title since it was on the line in the 1 versus all stipulation. Ambrose probably still faces Triple H for the WWE title at WrestleMania 32 like Reigns did, but it's a much more exciting main event than the one we got. And if you recall, the final 2 showdown they had in the Rumble was actually really solid. The match they had at Roadblock in early 2016 was also decent, so it would have been far more well received. Bray Wyatt was even around the title picture and Triple H's belt at this time. We could have gone down a route where Bray faced Dean at Mania and Triple H and Roman end their beef non-title.
How the hell is Triple H doing this match? Ambrose eliminated! Triple H is a 14 time!
In 2017, Roman Reigns comes in banged up but still wins yet another Royal Rumble. And I think it goes without saying, but no, it would not have been well received. But instead of facing Undertaker and beating him, we could have had Roman Reigns versus Bray Wyatt for the WWE Championship. That is, if Reigns were to choose the SmackDown champion route, where sadly I think Bray still does his spooky stuff in the ring like he did with Randy Orton, and he still loses. And if Reigns stays on Raw, then he probably faces and beats Goldberg like Lesnar did. They may have even ran Lesnar versus Taker again at Mania. And honestly, the only alternate timeline I'd want to see from Reigns in 2017 is one where he beats Taker, but after WrestleMania in the face of the boos, he becomes the tribal chief much earlier and turns heel. In 2018, it's another year where Roman Reigns was the runner-up, so he would have won instead.
Reigns. Oh, no!
Roman versus AJ Styles at WrestleMania 34 could have happened, and this might be a hot take, but I actually think it could have delivered far more than AJ versus Nakamura did. Because if you recall, the matches that Roman and AJ were having in 2016 were actually some of the best matches of that era. And hey, a lot of that credit goes to AJ Styles, but also you gotta give Roman some credit as well for their matches like at Extreme Rules. I thought the chemistry that those two had was so special, and I think it could have been really great if they would have ran that at WrestleMania. And of course, with Reigns being a Raw star, the more likely outcome is him just facing Lesnar anyway. Nakamura wins the Chamber in an alternate timeline and faces Styles regardless. Of course, in 2018, we began having women's Royal Rumbles. Asuka won the inaugural match, but if Nikki Bella had eliminated Asuka instead, she more than likely would have challenged for the SmackDown Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34.
Asuka and Nikki Bella, both on the apron, both have gone over the top rope. Asuka forward. Asuka eliminates Nikki Bella!
Instead of the famous Asuka streak ending, we could have seen Charlotte Flair versus Nikki Bella. This would have been a huge Total Divas era star versus the New Generation champion. But then in this timeline, that does mean Asuka's streak ends in the Royal Rumble technically, and it ends to Nikki Bella. But at least in one-on-one competition, she still would have been undefeated, so maybe that rub could have gone to someone who needed it a little bit more than Charlotte Flair. In 2019, Braun Strowman wins the Rumble over Seth Rollins. Strowman versus Lesnar would have have been the monster match fans have been waiting for years. It would have been pure chaos, and Strowman would have been the Beast Slayer, not Seth. If Strowman decides to go with the WWE title, then he faces Daniel Bryan, and you could have gone down the route of touching on how Bryan and Strowman were in the Wyatt family at separate times, and also Eric Rowan is around at that time as well. But then Kofi Mania never happens, and that fucking sucked. In 2019, Becky Lynch won amidst her The Man run. If Charlotte Flair, the runner-up, had won the Rumble instead, she likely would have challenged Ronda Rousey for the women's title anyway. We may have gotten Charlotte Flair versus Ronda one-on-one, or Becky would have found a way into the match anyway, since she was so over at the time, and that was kind of where things were going. In 2020, McIntyre never gets his crowning moment, and one of the greatest Rumbles ever just ends with Roman Reigns winning again.
There's a lot of power, but
This is arguably the biggest what-if scenario of them all. Reigns was originally scheduled to face Goldberg for the Universal title at Mania, but he pulled out amidst the pandemic and not wanting to risk any complications with his previous leukemia diagnosis. Roman versus Brock Lesnar could have happened again, but this time in the empty arena pandemic era too. But if Reigns sticks around and becomes the champion as the big dog, then the tribal chief possibly never happens. Roman never takes time off because he's the champion at that point after WrestleMania. He never comes back in the summer of 2020 to make that big return, and he may have never had the chance to change his character amidst the stubborn Vince McMahon era where he was constantly forcing the big dog, and that scenario is actually horrifying. Imagine a WWE right now where the Bloodline saga never happened. In 2020, the women's match was won originally by Charlotte Flair, but in this timeline, it would have been won by the runner-up, Shayna Baszler. If Shayna Baszler had won, she almost certainly would have challenged Becky Lynch anyway, but Shayna wouldn't have had her ultra-dominating chamber match. Although maybe in that scenario, instead of dominating inside the chamber, she just dominates in the Rumble instead, and maybe Charlotte would have gone down to NXT anyway to face Rhea for the title. In 2021, Orton wins yet another Royal Rumble and faces Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 37.
out of nowhere, an RKO, Randy Orton, Edge dumps Orton, Edge wins, Edge wins.
They may have still gone with the triple threat that featured Daniel Bryan. Perhaps Edge would have faced the Fiend Bray Wyatt instead, and for me, that's a dream match for sure. There is also the unlikely alternate timeline where Orton faces Finn Balor. Given that the NXT title was an option for Edge during this time, Orton could have made his way to NXT to get a belt that he had never won or never really needed to win. Orton could have also ended up facing Drew McIntyre and getting his revenge for their feud the year prior. He could have also faced Bobby Lashley or even The Miz, who had just cashed in at the Chamber. I mean, hell, there's a timeline here where he faces Otis at WrestleMania for the WWE title, because if he doesn't lose the briefcase to The Miz at Hell in a Cell the year prior due to the Tucker shenanigans, then we could have seen Otis versus Randy Orton, with Otis walking in as the WWE champion. That is a weird timeline. In 2021, if Rhea Ripley had won the Women's Rumble instead of Bianca, she likely would have chosen Raw Women's Champion Asuka anyway.
Oh, this is great. Oh, oh no. Oh, no. Belair, he's going to WrestleMania.
Although maybe we get an alternate timeline where Rhea chooses Sasha Banks, which I don't actually like as much as the timeline we got, because Bianca versus Sasha, generational moment. It is such a special moment for so many reasons, and I would not have liked to lose that in this other timeline. Except, you know what I would have liked to lose? Michael Cole, when Bianca was winning the championship, him screaming, kick out by Banks, wait, no! That was fucking stupid. That pisses.
Go now, Belair, powering Banks up. KOD! No way! It's a death! No way! Grabs up Banks! And a kick out! A kick out by...
In 2022, Drew McIntyre would have won instead of Brock Lesnar, and Drew McIntyre would have faced Roman Reigns here. Maybe Lesnar still wins an Elimination Chamber and forces his way in as a contender, making it a triple threat, or maybe Lashley keeps the WWE title heading into Mania 38, and we revisit the history between him and Drew McIntyre. If Charlotte had won instead of Ronda Rousey, she would have chose Becky Lynch, setting up for another massive chapter in their careers. Given that Flair was the SmackDown Women's Champion at this time as well, much like Roman and Brock, it would would have been a winner-takes-all match for both belts on the women's side too. Becky and Charlotte had even recent history at this time in that awkward heated title exchange segment, so this could have been built on their history long and short term. But sadly, it means no Becky versus Bianca, which is one of the best Mania matches ever. In 2023, Gunther wins instead of Cody Rhodes, meaning we get Gunther versus Roman Reigns, a match everyone is still begging to see. It would have been unreal and a totally different story to finish.
Gunther eliminated the American Nightmare, one step closer to the American Dream.
And in this timeline, you've got to wonder, does Gunther become the one to end the historic reign instead? In 2023, if Liv Morgan had won instead of Rhea Ripley, she likely would have challenged Bianca Belair, which means no Asuka Bianca, but Liv gets her title redemption after the previous year's events. Instead, Rhea Ripley chose Charlotte Flair and won the SmackDown Women's Championship, but Liv could have even faced Charlotte on that show as well. However, Liv ended up in the WrestleMania Tag Showcase alongside Raquel Rodriguez.
Alone, Morgan eliminated by Rhea Ripley.
In 2024, if Cody failed again and it was never to be his story,
Dusty's kid anymore. On the outside, Cody Rhodes is going to WrestleMania.
Punk versus Roman Reigns would have happened at WrestleMania 40 and it could have been the main event. Punk's first true definitive Mania main event and a slightly different story to the one they're having this year. Instead of being champion, Punk would have chased the title and had to get through the entire bloodline. This is also banking on the idea that Punk actually would have chosen Roman and not Seth Rollins, given that they had prior history and had hinted at the future feud early into Punk's return. They probably would have gone with Rollins Punk for the world title if he had not got injured, and Reigns might have still faced Cody in this timeline, or horrifically, maybe he faces The Rock at WrestleMania like was originally planned, and Cody is just never in the title picture, nor does he win the Royal Rumble. And in terms of the world title scene, Damian Priest might have still cashed in Money in the Bank, just on CM Punk this time. Or maybe McIntyre finds his way into the match regardless through the Elimination Chamber. On the women's side in 2024, Bayley would win after a historic performance.
Morgan, down goes Cargill with Oblivion, and Bayley eliminates Morgan. Bayley's going to WrestleMania.
But if Liv Morgan had won the Rumble instead, she likely would have challenged Rhea Ripley. It would have allowed them to revisit their history much sooner. Instead, Bayley chose Io Sky at WrestleMania 40 amidst the end of Damage Control. Of course, Damage Control's breakup could have been delayed with Liv facing Io instead. In this timeline, if Becky still wins the Elimination Chamber, then she could have faced Io Sky. In the timeline, of course, where Liv wins the Rumble and faces Rhea. In 2025, it would have been won by John Cena in his final year, as it should have been. Instead, Jey Uso went on to do some truly questionable booking choices, to say the least.
Look at the AA. Jey hanging in there. Jey wins. Jey Uso. Jey Uso.
But Cena winning and having a full final year with no heel turn in this timeline, filled with callbacks and dream matches, and winning 17 from Cody at Mania, is the timeline that we should have got realistically. And at this point, I think enough time has passed that a lot of us can admit, for as much as that moment was fantastic and for as much as we wanted to see it for years, John Cena turning heel was a mistake. In 2025 on the women's side, it was won by Charlotte Flair amidst her injury-defying comeback.
Charlotte with a kick. Charlotte Flair is going to WrestleMania.
But if the runner-up Roxanne Perez had won fresh out of NXT as the Iron Woman, WWE would have instantly created a new megastar on the spot. She likely would have challenged Rhea Ripley or Io Sky, giving us a generational clash, or even been a part of the triple threat, making it a fatal four-way. She equally could have challenged Tiffany Stratton for the WWE Women's Championship as Charlotte did. The road to WrestleMania in 2026 is still underway, so only time will tell truly what the alternate timeline would have been. I mean, we're still about 6 weeks away from WrestleMania as of right now, but on the men's side, the match would have been won by Gunther instead, and he could have gone on to try and kill the career of CM Punk at WrestleMania and get the World Championship back. It could have been a double story. I mean, he's trying to redeem himself for what happened last year with Jey Uso, but also he's trying to add to having retired AJ Styles, John Cena, and Bill Goldberg. And on the women's side, it was kind of a chaotic end to the match, but we could be seeing Vaquer versus Sol Ruca or Vaquer versus Tiffy. We could be getting Tiffy versus Jade again right now, or even Sol Ruca as the ultimate shocker in the Rumble amid her ascent, going on to fight for the World Championship.
There, isn't it? Living. Oh, you didn't want to go up there. A mistake made by Ruca. Tiffany Stratton made her pay. Oblivion for the win. Liv Morgan.
The Royal Royal Rumble winner defines the road to WrestleMania. But sometimes, the runner-up was seconds away from rewriting history. One different elimination, a different storyline, a completely different WrestleMania.